Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today we're going to be talking about Skip Holtz and an interview he had today where he talked about some pretty big things regarding the UFL's future. Now, he did mention a few things about the upcoming season and about himself in regards to college jobs and all that, but as you can see by the thumbnail, there's two really big things he did talk about, which we'll get into later in the video. Now, for those of you who don't know, he was on the three-man front radio show in Birmingham earlier today, November 14th, if you're watching this day it comes out, and he had an interview for like 30-ish minutes. I've got a link in the description for the entire interview if you want to go listen to it. And again, he talked about some pretty big things. Now, a quick shout out to State of the Stallions, as he was watching it or listening to this when it was happening, tweeting out stuff. And as you can see, we're going to first get right on into this with the college jobs. Now, there's been a lot of rumors over the past couple of years, mainly this offseason, about whether or not Skip Holtz would return to the UFL instead of going to a college job. Well, turns out, at least according to Skip, that about 12 colleges have called him over the past few years since, being with the Stallions about getting a job, but he currently just wants to stay with the Stallions. Look, he is the king of spring football, right? I know some would say the phrase, a big fish in a small pond, but right now, he is the biggest fish in this pond by a country mile. Look, you can like all these other coaches. You can respect the jobs guys like Wade Phillips has done, turning the Brahmas around. Mike Nolan making the Panthers better year after whatever that Jeff Fisher season was 3 years ago. But Skip Holtz has been the best coach in spring football by a wide margin. The fact is he has won a championship with 3 separate starting quarterbacks, and while he's had a lot of guys that have returned, he's had a great GM in Zach Potter. The fact is he is the best coach in spring football, and you can't even argue it because of, the results. And so, him sticking around is a very good thing for the UFL, right? Look, we all want to see players stick around, but it's really important to have coaches and general managers stick around to have that one guy you can always go to. It's like college football, right? Especially in the age of the transfer portal, where, yes, a lot of your favorite players might leave for one reason or another. And they were going to leave anyway to go to the NFL. But if you have a coach like a Nick Saban at Alabama who's there for well over a decade, right, it's a great thing to have. So having a coach like Skip Holtz stick around despite winning as much as he has is great to see, and hopefully he's able to continue sticking around. But now we go to the second thing, and that is, of course, the training camp roster sizes for 2025. Yes, more talk about the 2025 UFL season. Skip Holtz was talking about that. He says that UFL camp rosters will be 64 players. Now, this is more than the USFL had in 2023, as they had 58, and less than what the UFL had of 75. So this is a very solid number, all things considered. I do agree with James Larson. 75 was a bit much. You remember those videos I made where we were talking about all the players getting cut? It was a really weird thing because guys would get signed late into the training camp knowing damn well they weren't going to make it. They were just kind of filling out a roster spot. Doing this makes it to where if you're actually on that 64-man camp roster, you have a realistic shot of making the team compared to being on the bubble of 75. But at the same time, it gives extra players a chance to get paid for a few weeks compared to the USFL, which only had 58 back in 2023. It is great to see that we're all getting some confirmation about the 2023 season or the 2025 season as well. As well as this, some would say it's just coming from a coach. Come on, it's coming from a coach. We all know this is probably true. So, this is a cool thing to see. Again, the 2025 season is just a few months away. We are in mid-November, and the season starts, in late March. So, we're getting closer and closer to that season, and getting any sort of info regarding it is great to hear. And now it's time for the big stuff that he talked about. Skip Holtz said 3 things which were pretty huge. Number 1 is that the DFW, which is like the Dallas-Fort Worth area hub, will be around for at least 3 years. Now, he does say he thinks, so, take that with a little bit of grain of salt. But considering how he views that, and considering the fact that the USFL teams mainly have more of a, say in this because they actually did practice in their home stadiums back in 2023, I would say there's a decent amount of truth to this more than likely. This is not a awesome thing to see, if we're being honest. One of the issues in regards to getting these teams to feel like they matter to the city is about actually having the team be in the city. It's what I talked about back in 2023, that the USFL had more teams truly based in their home market than the XFL, because the XFL only had the Renegades, the USFL had the Showboats, Stallions, and Panthers. But again, the USFL didn't play games in their home markets outside of those 3 teams. And so it does suck that we're still not going to see these teams being truly based in their home markets yet, especially those that were there in the past, like the three I just mentioned. But it does seem that there is some sort of plan because he says the league would like to move teams into their home markets after that and then eventually sell the teams to owners. So when you see that, it makes it seem that the UFL is planning to not sell any team for at least 3 years. And that also goes into the next part, which is that the UFL could move from 8 to 10 teams in the next few years. That's a big one. Look, I was just banging my hand. I was just banging my hand on the desk saying that the league will not expand in 2025. I said that all these people, there was like a couple of YouTubers, a couple of news outlets that were saying government forced expansion and all that. I said that's total BS. The league will not expand in 2025. Didn't happen. Now, on the other hand, I am one who is advocating for a 2026 expansion. And when you see that the league could move from 8 to 10 in the next few years, that tells me that at least from a coach's perspective, let me phrase that, the coach, Skip Holtz, the coach in the UFL's perspective, he does not see expansion happening till at least 2027. That's what I get when I see that. Because we're not in 2025 yet, then 2026, 3 years out, is 2027. I'm not a huge fan of that. Look, I've talked about before, 2026 is a good time to expand. In theory, you should be able to bring back the Breakers and then choose an XFL team or do a Hail Mary and move the Roughnecks back to the XFL conference, then bring back a USFL team, whatever you want to do. I think that waiting till like 2028 would be just, I don't know. I like the idea of adding only 2 teams next year in 2026 and then sticking with 10 for a couple of years or something. It's just that seeing 8 teams again, it's just getting a little, not even a little, it's getting really old, right? 2019 AAF, 8 teams. 2020 XFL, 8 teams. 2022 USFL, 8 teams. 23 USFL, 8 teams. 23 XFL, 8 teams. UFL, 8 teams. UFL again, 8 teams. And then when you're seeing this, it's going to end up being that we could potentially get close to 10 years of spring football, granted not consecutively, but close to 10 years of spring football with just 8 teams in each league. I would love to see them expand in 26 as long as attendance goes up, which it should considering the UFL has been doing a much better job marketing, getting people in those areas than they did last year. But as for selling to owners, I think that we've all kind of gaslit ourselves into believing that people are just going to buy a team like that. And in some cases, I do think there is some sort of realistic, truth there, like the Showboats with Smith, like the Battlehawks due to their popularity. But overall, getting owners is a tough thing, right? Not every league can sell teams. I know there's that one basketball league. I apologize for not knowing it. But there's one that recently sold off its first team after playing for 8 years or something like that, I believe. But getting somebody to buy a team is not the easiest thing, especially because there's a lot of talk on how they want to sell teams, right? The league is currently mainly owned by Fox, Redbird, these mega companies. So it's, do they want to actually fully sell off a team or just kind of partially sell them off? So I think that it sucks in some ways to hear that, but I will say this. If this is coming from a guy like Skip Holtz, I think that this is really good for the future of the league overall. Because this makes it sound like Fox, Redbird, Danny, Daryl, all those guys have this idea of a vision for the team. They have this, or for the league, this vision that we're going to just kind of ride it out for the next couple of years, try to improve what we have, eventually expand, whether that be adding 2 teams or bringing teams to their home markets, and then eventually getting it to being a truly normal league where every team is owned by someone or partially owned, ran, however you want to view it, like that. But when I see stuff like this, you see these partnerships, I know there was an Under Armour one that got extended to 2026, a lot of these things being mentioned, it feels very different than let's say the AAF in 2019 or even the 2022 and 3 USFL, right? These other leagues always felt that they were just planning for the year that they're currently on and then maybe next year. But when we're seeing stuff like this is an overall vision, right? Because a lot of us who were USFL fans pretty much felt that if the merger didn't happen, the USFL was going to stick with the same 4 stadiums in 2023 or 2024, which a lot of people would have been very upset at, myself included. Whereas with the UFL, them sticking with what they're doing doesn't feel terrible because they're at least trying to make you aware of why they're doing it or that they are doing it, right? The USFL, with their expansion, how they were doing it with bringing teams to their home market, was pretty random, didn't have any sort of merit to it. It was just kind of like throwing darts at, a wheel or something of all 8 teams saying, okay, it landed on the Panthers, so we're going to bring the Panthers to Ford Field. Oh, we didn't hit the Stars? Well, too bad, you're going to be stuck in, Ford Field with them. It just felt random. The 2023 XFL felt like they were trying to rush a lot of things to compete with the USFL, and it backfired in some ways. The UFL, however, is feeling better. They had to rush in immensely for 2023 or 2024. They had to go guns blazing because they didn't get the merger done till very early January / very late December. They had to get everything set up like that. And now they've had a full offseason, and it seems that there is some sort of end goal. Again, this is all coming from a coach. So it's not like this is coming directly from like Daryl Johnson or Russ Brandon, admittedly. But again, when we're talking about these non-owners of the league, Skip Holtz is probably the number one guy you want to talk to with this because of his standing in the league. If the league's going to keep one coach above them all, despite how loved guys like Becton Phillips are, you're going to keep the guy that's won 3 straight championships. So him saying these things do have some merit to him, and I would say a very solid amount. But that'll do it for today's video. Let me know down below what you think about the league potentially not expanding until maybe even 2028, which would be crazy to think about, but let me know what you think about that. The DFW hub sticking around for another few years probably. The idea for the owners, whether or not you agree with Skip Holtz deciding to stay in the UFL and not go to a college job and all that. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. We are getting close to 1,000 subscribers. We are doing a giveaway at 1,000 subscribers. Barring any news comes out, I will be doing a part 2 to my AAF to UFL players video coming out next Friday. Again, barring any sort of, huge news that comes out. And as always, guys, have a great night.